If you ask in almost any country in the world who the greatest lover in history is, the answer will almost always be the same. And yet, the man at the center of this story has become such a myth, almost a legend, that many people still think he never really existed. To that, Giacomo Casanova, born in Venice in the 18th century, would certainly have had a few arguments, starting with the number of his conquests. More than 120 women. When you hear that number, two questions immediately come to mind. First, how did he live into his 70s at a time when venereal diseases were deadly? And second, how did a man who looked like him seduce so many? Look at his portraits. Angular features, a big nose, a broad forehead. Hardly a sex symbol, right? But looks weren't his only card. Money? Power? Not at all. Casanova was the son of poor actors with no fortune and no noble title. So, what was his secret? 3 centuries later, we can see that the real Casanova was very different from the legend, both less heroic and more complicated. Venice, his hometown, explains a lot. Today it's a tourist attraction, but in the 18th century it was a city of masks, mystery, and freedom. That's where Giacomo was born in 1725. His mother, an actress, often toured. His father died young, and he was raised by his grandmother. He learned to speak late and was thought to be slow. Later in his memoirs, he recounted his life in detail, but wrote nothing about his first 6 years. At 7, he was sent to Padua to study. He lived in miserable conditions but did well in school. There he discovered his first love, Bettina, his teacher's sister. He also revealed a critical mind. He laughed at exorcisms, questioned creation, and preferred gambling and women to church dogma. Thanks to an old senator, he began a career as a preacher. But one day he gave a sermon drunk, collapsed mid-speech, and that was the end of it. Back to Padua, back to gambling, debts, and eventually a stint in a seminary that ended in arrest. Locked up in a fortress, he seduced a guard's wife and caught his first venereal disease, a pattern that would repeat itself. Once free, he went to Rome, then Constantinople, then back to Venice. There he saved the life of Matteo Bragadin, a wealthy aristocrat, by stopping a doctor's harmful treatment. Bragadin, convinced Casanova had mystical powers, took him under his wing. Suddenly Casanova had fine clothes, money, a home, and access to high society. But excesses, scandals, and reckless behavior drove him into exile again. That was the start of a restless life across Europe. Paris, Dresden, Amsterdam, London, always the same story. Seductions, gambling, debts, schemes, escapes. In Paris he grew rich through the royal lottery and mingled with Rousseau, Madame de Pompadour, and others. In Amsterdam, he tried running a silk factory but wasted money on women and lavish gifts. In Poland, a duel nearly cost him an arm. In Russia, he met Catherine the Great, but his projects were dismissed. At 30, he staged his most famous episode, the escape from the Leeds prison in Venice. With a fellow inmate, he drilled through the ceiling, crawled across the Doge's palace rooftops, and slipped into the night. A daring escape that cemented his legend, but fame had its price. Over time, illness weakened him, and his reputation as a great lover slid into that of a fraudster. In his 50s, he returned to Venice after 20 years away, older and marked by disease. He reunited with Bettina, his first love, now dying. 10 years later, he was expelled again, this time for satirical writings. His final years were spent in Bohemia, working as a librarian in a nobleman's castle. He died there in 1798 at 73. But before his death, he finished his masterpiece, The Story of My Life, 12 volumes and over 3,000 pages. It's thanks to these memoirs that we know Casanova so well today. But is it all true? Not really. Many public events can be confirmed, but his supposed romantic conquests can't be proven. Did he really sleep with over 100 women? How many children did he leave behind? We'll never know. What we can say is this. In the 21st century, Casanova doesn't look like the ultimate lover, more like a man scarred by childhood abandonment, chasing pleasure to fill a void. A seducer, a gambler, a fugitive, but above all, a man who wore a mask, literally and figuratively, that lasted longer than he did.